This is the W.T.F. Bach podcast.
Write that feet. Work those fingers.
This is the podcast about all things Johann Sebastian Bach. Brought to you by Evan Shinners. W.T.F. Bach. Brought to you by Evan Shinners. Join W.T.F. Bach as he guides your mind through a contrapuntal journey. And now here's W.T.F. Bach.
Hello, it's W.T.F. Bach here, moniker of one Evan Shinners, and you may call me either. The goal of this podcast is to be your guide through a tale of three things: quill, ink, and paper, through whose combination one mind walked the world of human emotion over and again, and then some, to set your ears on structural or biographical aspects of this music by one J.S. Bach, with the hope that it helps you gain more appreciation for it. Now, this is an interview episode. From time to time, I aim to bring onto this show people who come from various backgrounds but are somehow all united around Bach, and at least in these early episodes, discuss the Art of Fugue. So my guest today is Jack Stratton, founding member of the band Vulfpeck. Now, every era, every genre has their Velasquez or their John Cage, so tell me what you think of this. An album made for Spotify called Sleepify, with 10 tracks, all either 31 or 32 seconds in length. They are entitled, in order, Z, ZZ, ZZZ, ZZZZ, ZZZZZ, ZZZZZZ, ZZZZZZ, ZZZZZZZ, ZZZZZZZ, ZZZZZZZZ. Now, the band encouraged their fans to loop this album when they slept. Why? Because every track is just silence. Mr. Stratton figured that if Spotify is playing something, why not play silence during sleep to at least figure out where their fans were listening? And from this, Stratton was not only able to tell where their fans were listening, but to use these royalties to fund a series of free concerts in those locations. Is this not the 4 minutes and 33 seconds of streaming music? But why does Jack belong on a podcast about Bach and about the Art of Fugue? Well, because when perusing the Wikipedia page for the Art of Fugue, as one does, I noticed a funny thing. A funk band called Vulfpeck arranging the Art of Fugue? I had to get to the bottom of it. And since the music world is very small, and since admittedly I can live pretty isolated within my Bach bubble, it turns out that we have many mutual friends, even one mutual friend with whom I've played Bach and who played funk with Vulfpeck at Madison Square Garden. Well, that's right. Vulfpeck sold out Madison Square Garden in 2019. They were one of the first bands to do so without a manager, without a label. I just love that fact. So please enjoy this interview with Mr. Jack Stratton. We spoke for about an hour, and the conversation went everywhere, from Facebook to klezmer, from Mozart to Steely Dan. I sought to have the WTF Bach interviews Jack Stratton episode, but even from the first sentence, Jack flips the question onto me and says, hey, is this true about Bach? Is this true about Bach? And it was only after a few minutes that I was able to start asking him the questions about his background and figure out how someone who started on drum set with the Beatles, instead of the Beatle, who is Beethoven, could still find his way to Bach, and of course find his way to the Art of Fugue, because I'm telling you, the deeper you get into music, the more you realize that all roads lead to this dark, mysterious mountain called the Art of Fugue. Jack has been on that road. Jack clearly admires the musician with polyphonic abilities, the musician who is able to compose first on paper, and I love the way he reacts to hearing about the legendary anecdotes about Bach and Mozart. And I do see similarities between Bach and Jack Stratton, and it has to do with mediums. Bach was obsessed with finding a medium like the solo violin and figuring out a way to go to every end to completely encompass this medium. The same thing with the organ or the cello. And although some of you purists might cringe, Jack finds his mediums in social media. This aforementioned Spotify album, the way he thinks about Twitter, even recently as of September 2020, he was selling, quote, prime auditory real estate on his latest album on eBay. He takes these seemingly fickle things and spins them into really beautiful artistic statements. I find this creative, forward-thinking, and of course, because he admires Bach's craft, I find a mind like Jack Stratton's very encouraging. This is all to say nothing about the quality of Vulfpeck's music, and if you don't already know, Vulfpeck. And if you like funk, well, WT Funk are you waiting for?
And now, on this special episode of the WTF Bach podcast, please welcome Jack Stratton.
So, Jack Stratton, welcome to the show.
Right on. Yeah, I'm super excited to get into it. I've been searching for someone truly obsessed to ask a few questions of. So I think you're the guy.
Great. Well, let's find out.
All right. Yeah, I've heard this phrase before. Some musicians begin eras, some end them. That this was said about Bach by someone famous at some point. Do you think that's true? Does that make any sense?
I don't think it's true. I mean, he may have ended music. In that there's a lot of great quotes saying that if all the music destroyed after Bach, if all music were destroyed after Bach, it could be recreated through Bach's music.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it was said about Bach that he ended an era, as put that. I don't know. I don't know if you feel that way, or if I don't know. I don't know the origin. I think maybe Mendelssohn said it. I don't know.
It's true that his music was, I suppose, falling out of fashion slightly toward the end of his life. But it wasn't ever like it was so out of fashion. It might have been 10 years or 15 years out of fashion. But, Bach, say, 1725 is right in the thick of everything that's going on.
Okay. So that's not really true that he was undiscovered or something.
No, I think that is sort of a myth that he was forgotten about. You see, the thing that happened is that fugues were not popular at a time when Bach was writing the Art of Fugue.
Oh.
And that might have something to do with it. It was that the estate was going broke sort of right as Bach died. And they thought, well, what are we going to do with this big thing that he's been working on, this Art of Fugue? I mean, fugues aren't popular anymore. What are we going to do with this?
Okay. Yeah, this is why this is fun, is that I have kind of a freshman year level understanding of the whole thing. I mean, I'm down in a big way. Like, I don't actually know. I've always felt he was different. I've always had that sense. Something was definitely different. So, were any of his kids on his level? Is that could they write like that?
On his level, I mean, in that. Well, Albert Schweitzer puts it that his sons have either the tendency to be overrated or underrated, just based on the greatness of JS.
Interesting.
His kids straddled the different eras. You have his eldest son, W.F., and he was writing very much in the Baroque vein. And then you have his younger sons, who were sort of writing in the classical idioms.
Right.
But
right.
No, the short answer is, of course, Bach was the, JSB was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I when I was in music school, I was doing the recording program. I wasn't in the classical program, but I wanted to do a project with 4 trombones at 4 different speeds. I thought that would be kind of cool. So I was asking around. I was like, can anyone, write a serious fugue? Because I couldn't. And then it seemed like no one could. And I was like, wait a sec, is this, it never, I figured someone there could do it, but apparently you can't even, there's not many people that can even write those fugues anymore. Like, they're not even improvised, they're written, but or you tell me, do you know people that can write a serious fugue like that?
Yeah, there are still people who can even improvise fugues.
There are. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Sure. I think mostly that belongs to the church organists of the world, who's
cool.
They're still continuing in that tradition, but yeah, sure. The quality is lost. There's that great story about Bach sitting in the church next to one of his sons, and as soon as the organist begins to improvise on a theme from which he's about to make a fugue, Bach whispers into the ear of his son, and he says, it can be inverted at the second note, it can be augmented on the third note, there could be a stretto at the fourth note and things like this. And then he will judge the quality of the improvisation based on how many of those things the organist checks off. And every time he does one of those things, Bach's sort of nudging his son, going, see, I told you, second note inverted.
Wow. What a scene.
Yeah.
Can people improvise 4-part fugues? That's impossible, right?
No, very simple ones, sure.
Okay.
Simple ones. I mean, the best sort of example we have of an improvised fugue by Bach is the Ricercare in 3 voices from the musical Offering, which, as the story goes, is he was there in front of King Frederick of Prussia, and this theme, this royal theme, was played to Bach, and then the king said, "Can you improvise a fugue on it?" And Bach sat down and improvised this 3-voice fugue and wrote it down afterwards, and we believe that what he wrote down afterwards sort of resembles the improvisation. And then the fugue, and then the king gets a little greedy. He says, "Can you do it in 6 voices?" He politely declines to play a fugue on the same theme in 6 voices, but will improvise a fugue in 6 voices with a theme of his own choosing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he, and then he did that with 6 parts.
And then he did that. And then in the carriage ride home, I picture it's the carriage ride home back to Leipzig. He actually writes out the Ricercare in 6 voices.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Can you hang with 6 voices, or I've always felt 4 was like plenty. Can you hang with 6?
I play the 6-voice Ricercare, but I can't claim that I'm keeping track of all 6 voices when I play it.
Right. But you can hear it. Can you? Or it works. I haven't heard it.
Oh, it's a great one. It's thought of to be one of the first compositions for actual piano.
Oh, really?
Because where Bach was when he improvised it was on this Silbermann pianoforte. And so you can sort of see some of these sections from this Ricercare in 3 voices possibly mimicking crescendo and diminuendo effects, which is wild.
Wild, yeah, because I never even knew he played piano. I didn't know it was around at that point.
It was being built. He sold a piano. There's some documents of him selling a piano and talking about what setbacks it has, what benefits it has. But yeah, right around the time of his death, that was
Craigslist.
The Craigslist Leipzig. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, no, I need to get my story straight, because I hear all the myths and the all the legendary stuff, but and everyone loves Bach, but no one goes super deep,
Well, so can you just give us some of your background? Like, what does the 12-year-old Jack Stratton look like with music? What kind of things are you doing at age 12 with music?
12. What grade is that? 6th grade?
I think that's 6th grade, yeah.
6, yeah. By then I was playing drum set and taking lessons on drum set and playing trumpet in the school band, and had a Beatles cover band with a friend I still work with, Rob Stenson, who did the visual, mind you, of that Bach animation that Vulfpeck put out. He was kind of the John Lennon, guitar and vocals, and I was just playing drums, and we had a bass. And so that's where it was at 12, just getting into probably getting deeper into the Beatles and Michael Jackson, and 6th grade. I don't quite remember. Cream. I liked Cream pretty early on. Yeah, wasn't into Bach at that point. No chance.
What came first, the love of jazz or the love of Bach?
Probably around the same time in college. I could just start to hear hear what they actually were. Like, prior to that, it just kind of sounded like jazz and just kind of sounded like classical music to me. Just was a vibe.
Yeah.
And then started to be able to hear it a little bit, and then being able to really hear, the different composers within it, or potentially being able to pick them out. But yeah, I still haven't really gotten past Bach, and I've never really gotten past like Oscar Peterson. Like, the first people I could hear, I still haven't gone past them, really.
Do you associate yourself with one instrument? Like, if you were on a desert island, but you could only have one instrument, what instrument would it be? What would you bring?
Probably a keyboard. Probably. That's what I just play the most in my room. Just jam out on piano. But it's that's probably it. But bass and drums are probably what I'm better at, but yeah, the keys just because they're for composition and whatnot.
Do you have a schedule, with how you practice all the different instruments? Are you, do you say, okay, I'm going to do this much guitar a day, or is it just kind of?
No. I just kind of I just keep them out, which is the usual advice. Keep them laying around and maybe try to learn something. I've tried to play some Bach on keys, but I don't have the gift for finger dexterity. I can I kind of have these, I can play, I don't know what it's called, but just, I can hit my whole hand on the keyboard. But like Woody, the other guy in Vulfpeck, he's got great interfinger stuff, and he can play, he's played some Bach stuff over the years, and he can actually do it. I could never really do it, and I tried for like a good little while to get it happening, and it's just like they don't freaking work. That you got to have a real special gift to do that stuff, or I just didn't start young enough. Probably not, though. I bet even if I started young, it wouldn't have worked.
It's funny because I learned about Vulfpeck actually through the Wikipedia page on the Art of Fugue.
No way.
Yes way.
No frickin' way.
Yes way. And I thought it's quite an accomplishment because then you have the list of notable harpsichord recordings, the pianists, the organists, the string quartet, and then under other, there it is, Vulfpeck. And I thought, wow, okay. So then,
oh my God.
Then from there, so my question is, do you have anything to do with that Wikipedia entry?
No. That's a good question though, because I have messed around on Wikipedia in the past. I don't know who. You could probably look up who edited it. Is it the TalkBox one or the recent synthesizer one?
It says there's a complete arrangement of the Art of Fugue by Vulfpeck, which I was
that's not true.
Very excited about, but disappointed to find that you've arranged the 9th contrapunctus.
Yeah. I've only messed with number 9.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I'm waiting for you to get there on the podcast, because that's the only one I can really dig into. It is special, right? 9, would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I thought it was when I heard it. I was like, whoa, this one's. I think until the last 20 seconds. Do you hear that? Do you hear that?
That it's special until the last 20 seconds?
The last 20 seconds have never. I can't follow them as easily as leading up to there.
Let me grab the score. Hold on. Let me grab the score.
No, I don't know. I mean, I'm Clive Davis over here, just trying to find the hook.
I'm wondering if you know what he means when he says alla duodecima.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Does that mean the last quarter's not totally sick? Is that what that translates?
It's it means at the 12th. So it's counterpoint. Okay. It's counterpoint that simultaneously functions at the unison and at the 12th. So you have these two themes here. You've obviously got your Art of Fugue theme, da dee dum bum, and you have your other theme, which starts the fugue, bum bee da dee 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 dim.
Yeah.
So when he brings in both themes at the same time, he first does it at the octave or the unison. But then right around the golden section, he combines both of them, but he shifts the interval at which they're imitating each other to show that not only is this double counterpoint, but it's functional at two different levels. And the next fugue, the fugue after 9, is a double fugue at the decima, where the counterpoint functions at the 10th as well as the unison.
Oh my gosh. I'm so out of my that's so high level. That is so high level. Yeah, I'm hanging on for dear life at that point. I mean, the magic trick to me is he's got 4 voices going on, and it sounds like music. It's like, damn, that is crazy.
Yeah,
that is seriously difficult to do. I will remain the awestruck audience member of this magician, but you're getting it. You're going into, how they saw the body in half. You're really going for it. Yeah.
Well, on your YouTube channel, you have these 2 videos dedicated to this fugue. Can you tell us what you're trying to impart by sharing Bach and by sharing this very, difficult, complicated music? What are you trying to show?
Yeah, you were quoting someone where you said it strikes a balance between being enjoyable right before it gets into just insanity. Like Bach is right there at that crossing. And I've always felt that, where it's really, it sounds great. It sounds awesome. And it's so complicated. Yeah. So I think people enjoy that feeling. They kind of feel smart or something, that they're actually getting pleasure from something that's so intellectual in a way. So it, you feel good about yourself in actually enjoying it versus, feigning that you are entertained by something just so out there. I think people really do just like it. I think Bach in particular kind of is overlooked in a big way, maybe because he wasn't playing much piano. Yeah, what do you think about people playing it all on piano now? Does that have you ever thought about that?
Well, of course, I'm a pianist, Yeah.
Yeah, but like Glenn Gould and is, I've heard people say that that's how Bach would have played it, or do you think that's true? I mean, it's on a piano, right?
About Gould?
Yeah, I've heard people say he's the best at interpreting the music, but then I'm thinking, well, Bach wasn't even playing it on a piano.
Right. No, Gould, of course, a long time idol of mine.
Yeah,
is
totally.
Is probably about as far removed from how Bach played it as you could get.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I gotta get these myths busted.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, I mean...
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, besides being on the piano, of course, which is... Well, okay, for starters, it's like, look at the music and you have to say, but the great thing about Bach is that it can be played like Gould and still be wonderful. And a lot of composers don't have such flexibility. You can't really do that to most of the composers, but Bach... Somehow the construction, the foundation is so stable that you could have someone like Gould who almost on purpose tries to destroy the music as much as possible.
Oh, really?
And yet it can't be.
Did he ever say something like that? He was trying to destroy it, or is that...
He did tend to make outrageous statements. Like he notoriously hated Mozart. He thought Mozart was a, quote, bad composer. He I mean, he was a PR genius. He said that Mozart died too late, 35 years old. Yeah,
I never heard this.
Yeah. Oh, and he said that Beethoven was a person involved in. Was so wrapped up in his own head that he convinced himself that his own ideas were good at a certain era. And he's sort of referring to the middle period of Beethoven, where Gould sort of hated the Emperor Concerto, the Fifth Piano Concerto. But while Gould was saying this, he's talking about an artist being in a surrounding where no matter what he does, the decision-making process in his mind is rationalized, and therefore anything that he does is a good idea. And while he was saying this about Beethoven, I couldn't help but thinking that this was exactly what Glenn Gould does, is that he rationalizes everything to a point where no matter what he does, he somehow justifies it. And of course, the way that Gould plays Bach is historically without precedent. It's lovely, but of course it's an absolutely modern take on Bach.
Interesting. Like even the feel and stuff,
especially the feel,
because it was too much like too much to the metronome, or not enough?
Too much to the metronome. The thing, we tend to forget that this music would have been played with an extreme amount of rubato and freedom.
Oh, really?
Especially a large-scale beat, The large beat would have still been in place, like, say, measures or two measures at a time. But within the measure, there was this immense sense of freedom. And
interesting.
Yeah, and that's really the feel of Bach, is to be able to sort of bend the time. Because, his instrument was the harpsichord. It's an instrument where you can't make a crescendo. You can't really differentiate the voices. So your only method of bringing out the nuance and showing that there are four moving parts here is to kind of play each part with its own individual freedom.
Right. Yeah, that did occur to me, that he had to strut his stuff in the note choice so much because he didn't have that velocity sensitivity.
Right.
My friend Rob, who I mentioned, who did the animation, he's big on, artists at their given time in their life. We discount how much they were a product of the technology available. Would Bach be writing that stuff if he was if his first instrument was piano?
Yeah, I mean, they're theoretically interesting questions, but they can't be answered. I do think, though, that if, for example, there were a piano with pedals on it, the way that Bach sort of approached instruments that could affect different levels of coloring, say, for example, like the 2-manual harpsichord, was that he writes this Italian concerto for 2 manuals where he'll write an entire section for 1 manual and then switch in the next section to go with the 2nd manual, so that each piece is sort of divided into sections. And I did think that if Bach were composing some sort of a sonata or something for piano, he would switch between where the pedal is used and where the pedal is not used, and it would be extremely drastic. So he would have one section made all in scales where the pedal was not to be touched at all. And then on the next page, it would be, boom, the pedal down the entire time, and it would all be arpeggios or something like that. Like, I think Bach's thinking was sort of organized in terms of terraces like this. But of course, that's unfounded on anything. I mean, it's just hypothesis, yeah?
I gotcha. So he was thinking about the instruments. He wasn't just fully just a fugal brain just existing. Would have been the same no matter what was.
No, of course not.
Yeah, right.
So they've often thought that, I say they, meaning people who have approached the Art of Fugue have often said that it's not a work for any specified instrument because of the appearance of it in 4 staves and things like that. But the truth is that every single second of it is playable on the harpsichord. And if you try and do that with any other piece of Bach's written in 4 staves, for example, like his choir music or something, it doesn't work. The music for violin is so idiomatically violin-like, and for cello and for flute and for everything. He knew exactly what he was writing the music for.
Yeah, I've heard that myth too, that it wasn't written for keyboard. But then I've seen Gould play it. I'm like, what? He's playing it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. We mentioned sort of what would Bach be doing.
Yeah.
And I see that Bach was working with a lot of constraints in his time. So he's saying, with the Art of Fugue, he says, okay, I'm going to try and make 14 fugues based on this one subject.
Wow.
When tuning was a thing, he said, I'm going to make a prelude and fugue in all possible keys. I'm wondering if you have something similar to that with social media, because do you see social media like as a type of constraint or some sort of a limit through which to focus?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I will try to make 40 TikToks off one hip rotation. No, it's funny how I'm moderately obsessed with all the different platforms and what works on what. We did something with Nate Smith, the drummer, and we were filming it. And there's a little drum break in the beginning, like within the first 20 seconds, the first Fearless Flyers release. And I told him, I was like, just do something with. He does these really fast things on the kick drum with one pedal, like freakishly fast. I'm like, do something right there, because I had a hunch that on Facebook, that would be like. If that was earlier in the song rather than a musician's instinct to leave it for the last chorus to really play out. And, that thing went crazy on Facebook. So I don't know if that's why, but yeah, and it didn't necessarily do much on YouTube. But our biggest tunes on YouTube are kind of us getting together in a basement and just jamming out videos. And those don't do well on Spotify, where the vocal tunes do really well, So it's all kind of an interesting, if you're composing for a different platform, where it's going to. Ultimately, the best insurance policy is just to make good albums that work on YouTube and Spotify, and people want to own a physical copy of it. That's what I'm moving towards, actually, with like this Bach track is on the album versus back in the day I just would have put out a YouTube video of, isn't this fun? I kind of want to categorize everything into albums just because it's more fun. I mean, that's very Bach, or maybe that was all after Bach's life, the catalog, numbering. Was he doing that, or was that a bunch of people after him who organized it?
He was certainly doing it. Yeah, he certainly collected his. He has an Opus 1 and an Opus 2, etc.
Wow. Yeah. So we're very similar. Yeah. Here's a myth buster. Was he the baddest improviser of his day? I've heard he would just ruin everyone.
Oh sure.
Is that true?
Oh sure. Absolutely. Oh sure. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, there's that story between him and Louis Marchand, who was supposed to be this incredible French improviser. And I forget exactly which town this was in.
I love it already.
The king had invited both Bach and Marchand to have this improvising contest. And the day of the contest, Bach is there, but Marchand has taken the first carriage out of the city. And the legend has it that Marchand heard Bach practicing the night before and just couldn't face what was going to be certain defeat.
Would this have been on organ?
Harpsichord.
Harpsichord. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that generally where they would duel? Is the harp, or would it organ? Doesn't really matter.
Oh, I'm sure it matters. I guess the famous duels are this one of Bach and Mozart versus Clementi. Mozart and Clementi was done on a pianoforte. I loved that, though, the Mozart and Clementi one, because apparently Mozart was hailed as the greater improviser, but Clementi was hailed as the person with better chops.
Oh, interesting.
Which is really interesting, isn't it?
Right. Okay, yeah, there's probably some modern analogs to that. Yeah, that's interesting.
I want to talk about Fugue State. And
yes.
I thought Fugue State was another reference to Art of Fugue. But actually, I realized that a fugue state, this is now coming from Wikipedia, in a psychogenic fugue, an individual may wander away from home or work and assume a new identity, cannot remember his previous identity, and upon recovering, cannot recall the events that occurred during the fugue state. In many cases, the disturbance lasts only a few hours or days, but in severe conditions, it can last months or even longer. To me, this is exactly what your composition of Fugue State does. It begins with this very grooving section and then wanders off into something which is fugue-like and then comes back. So my question is, what came first? The composition or reading about what a fugue state is?
I think I was in a heavy Bach period, and I can't write fugues. I've never really tried, or I have tried and failed. So Woody, who can play Bach, I was like, dude, write something with a fugue in it. I don't know if those were two separate ideas initially. I think it was all part of his original demo, was the grooving section and then going into the fugue. So I think it was just a prompt from me where I was like, dude, write something with a fugue in it, please. And then, I knew I think I had heard that term somewhere else, and just on some psychologist talking about it, and just thought it was a good title. So I don't know, but that little counterpoint in there. I don't think he would claim to be on. He hasn't studied fugues. He can improvise little 2-part stuff, which has always blown my mind. He can do it. And I'm just a real sucker for that. Yeah, I don't know what he would say if it will work at the octave and the 10th. I don't know how deep he was going with his layers there, but I think it gets the point across, and it's hooky. I've seen other people play it on a single keyboard, each part, and it's nice. We split it up between the instruments.
You've seen people doing transcriptions of that section?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's got it. He knows what some of those moves are. He's got some of those moves down where I don't. That's why it's somewhat accessible. The Bach stuff is most everyone can hear it. Very, very few can do it, which is the magic.
So Bach has these Easter eggs in his music. He has these areas where if you look closely enough, you can see him spelling his name or using numerological references to spell out the number that his name represents. And it will sort of always remain unclear what Bach's intention was with these Easter eggs. A lot of your fans talk about your Easter eggs. So what's your intention?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this on Instagram where I do things in meme format, with the text above it. And I generally try to write stuff that's totally incoherent. And there's enough Vulf fans who are down with that they will like it and comment on it. And then it will show up in people's Explore tabs as a meme, and they click on it and it's totally absurd. And you see a meme and you think it's going to make some sense. So I think a lot of the fans are in on the joke of we're going to make this total nonsense go viral. And so it's kind of just a ongoing, disinformation campaign that I'm leading, that the fans are in on, just to create, an us and them narrative within the fan base. So yeah, there's a growing list of inside jokes that just they make no sense, and it's really fun. I don't know how you'd go about figuring them all out. It might be talking about like 25 people who are just circulating these. I've said no government subsidies for active basses in a video, basses with a battery in them, and that's just become this rallying cry that shows up all over the web now. Whenever I make an appearance, people have no idea what they're referring to. It's fun.
So you founded Vulfpeck when you were in Ann Arbor. Can you tell us about Encore Records?
Oh, the vinyl shop?
Yeah.
I was not into vinyl in college. I would just do the usual kind of just feel the vibes in there, but I wasn't deep. We had some friends who worked there. I think is it still there? I think it's one of the survivors. Yeah.
What about Nirvana? They made this one club really famous in Ann Arbor.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Blind Pig. Yeah, we certainly played there. That was definitely the club to play as it was the club. I don't know what, might be 600 person, and if you could sell it out, that was like the big deal for the bands in Ann Arbor, and great shows would come through there. We went back to play there. I had a horrible experience with the bouncer. He confiscated someone's real ID, so she was stuck outside the club without her actual ID, and it was like, oh, come on, guys, So that was yeah, but yeah, legendary spot. I don't know what they're doing right now. Yeah, Nirvana really liked it. For whatever that's worth, Yeah.
So your father's a klezmer musician. Do you see a connection between klezmer music and Bach?
Huh. I mean, I don't know. We had Michael Winograd, the clarinetist, open our show at Madison Square Garden, and he plays kind of in the style of what a klezmer musician would be doing in New York City in like the 1920s or something. Dave Tarras style klezmer. That's his Bach. Dave Tarras, who was a guy in New York in the early, or jamming out in the early part of the century. I believe. Oh man, I don't want to get this wrong, but there was the feud there. The feud there was Naftule Brandwein and Dave Tarras. This was the original battle for Brooklyn. These two klezmer clarinetists, and I believe Tarras was the one that could play Bach. Like he was legit. He was studied, and Naftule was more of the feel guy, just from the heart. So that style of klezmer, a lot of those guys were legit and could. I mean, you listen to Winograd, and it's like it's pretty serious chops plus melodies plus the harmonies moving. You know, it's not all just straight D minor. You know, they'll get around the whole. You know, I don't know if that's Winograd's spin on it, but when he plays, I hear that level of complexity meets accessibility that I get. But yeah, I could see that. There's definitely the legends of klezmer that are kind of spoken about in a similar way. They're later in history though. They're all Americans and stuff.
Now you seem to be somewhat of a Germanophile.
Oh yeah.
And the title of your possibly infinitely forthcoming greatest hits album, Kunstwerk. I can't help but draw a connection between Fugue State, Kunstwerk, the Art of Fugue, die Kunst der Fuge, and thinking that, you know, Bach has some sort of long-term planning with regards to you and your career. I mean, why the Germanophilia?
Man, great question. Great question. No one's ever accused me of that, but I'm down. I guess early on, Vulfpeck, is a German. Well, unfortunately, I even got that wrong. That a German would, if you presented a German with the word Vulfpeck, they would say Vulfpeck. But in my head, I thought it was Vulfpeck. I mutated that. So yeah, the whole German thing just seemed at the time in college, it was like going over to Europe to play music was kind of a very cool idea. And some of the best musicians my age, oh yeah, we played in Zurich or something. And just be like, oh, that sounds cool. And so I was like, you know what? We're just gonna pretend that we're Europeans, and American college students will think we're just an ounce cooler. And that's about the extent of it. The fact that it was all around the German thing, that I've said in the past, but there was a producer there, Reinhold Mack, who was just, and I think a lot of the British musicians like Queen and ELO were recording in Germany for some tax benefits because it was a rough time and for taxes, I guess. I don't know the specifics of that or how they were saving money by doing that. So they all ended up at this guy's studio in Munich, and he happened to be getting like just insanely great sounds. So I love all those records that were made in Germany. So I guess that's how I landed on the German thing. And yeah, is Bach straight German, or have the borders changed or something? Was he just a German dude?
He was pretty German. He was one of the few composers that didn't travel. The furthest away he ever went from home was to Berlin, was to Potsdam. For that journey to King Frederick. But actually,
so the French duel, they had to come to him to.
The French Marchand was, I think, dismissed from the Parisian court, and was wandering around in Germany, sort of showcasing his technique. When whomever was at where it's too bad I can't remember the place. Might have been like Weimar or something like that.
All right. So Bach was pretty freaking German. Okay, good to know.
Bach was very German.
You never know in that era, or I guess maybe later than his era. They were all I don't know, just kind of everywhere, all over Europe, and talking to each other. And was Mozart, what was Mozart's, was he working out of where he was born, or was he just all over the place?
Mozart is referred to by Alan Watts as the first genius of Europe. And it's
There you go.
and it's because Mozart left his employment to sort of become what we now know as a freelancer. But Mozart was really the first freelancer in music. And he left his court position in Salzburg and went to Vienna.
In where?
Salzburg.
Okay.
And
went to Vienna.
He's from Salzburg, and he went to Vienna. And of course, ultimately, it didn't work out for him. He spent a few years in declining health in Vienna and then died at age 35.
Yeah. My OG Jewish name was Salzburg.
Really?
It changed to Stratton. So I guess yeah. That's I didn't know that. That's it.
Well, let's talk about your name, because I've thought about a few things. BACH, using the the numerical alphabet, where A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, etc. BACH equals 14, and this was Bach's number. So I've been thinking about your name, and you have JACK. So you have, firstly, the two middle letters are the same, Jack and Bach. J plus A plus C plus K equals 25.
Okay.
There are a couple systems where you can spell your name musically. So I've come up with a few of them. So JACK, using the French musical alphabet, is C sharp, A, C natural, D.
Mm-hmm.
And Stratton can be made many different ways. Here's one. S is the German ES, which means E flat. T is like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, but T is the B flat and not the B natural. R for re would be a D. A, obviously A. T, T again. The O. Sometimes composers omit certain vowels, and then another N. So you come up with this, the musical melody. E flat, B flat, D, A, E flat, B flat, and then G or F, depending on how you count up to the N.
Okay.
So I'm going to send these to you and see if you can sort of put some Easter eggs into your next.
Okay.
See if you can start
Sweet.
spelling Jack and Stratton.
I like that. Yeah. No, I haven't experimented much with like musical. I guess there's a moment in a song where we go Roberta Flack, Donny Hathaway, Frank Sinatra, and that is straight from a Steely Dan documentary where Bernard Purdy's listing off who he's played with. So people who just happen to be watching that documentary who know the song are in for a real treat, which has happened many, many times. They think they're going a little crazy, but yes, it's true. There's a few. Yeah, I guess most of them do relate to Steely Dan. We put coded Steely Dan references into a lot of the music. I think he's the Bach nerd. Fagan, I would guess.
Oh yeah,
I know he's. Yeah, okay. You sense that.
Well, no, actually, I don't know. I'd have to ask my guru if Steely Dan was into Bach. But I have a feeling.
I think they've ripped off one of the organ toccatas for a tune. I think I've maybe the harmony from it or something. So he's hip. I was gonna ask you. I remember in college hearing pieces. Mozart would just kind of put a Bach piece on violins or something, kind of a rearrangement. Right. Was that kosher back in the day? Were people like, hey, he's ripping him off, or was that just kind of how it was done?
Oh no, well, Mozart doesn't publish those fugues under his own name.
Oh, he doesn't? Okay.
Yeah, those fugues, those string trio transcriptions you're referring to were these organ sonatas that Bach wrote, which are about the hardest thing you could possibly play on organ. They're 3 obligato lines, one hand on one keyboard each, and the feet on yet another keyboard made of pedals. So in order to play this 3-part music, you need to be a virtuoso organist, which at Mozart's time was pretty much forgotten. But the music, of course,
oh really,
was still in high demand, especially from the Mozart who had just discovered Bach at age 25 or something like that. So he made these
What's up with that?
transcriptions.
What's up with that?
What's
How
up
did
with
he-
that?
how did-
It's that music, instead of being ideal for many years, was purely functional. But when Mozart was in Leipzig, he happened to hear a performance of one of the motets, and he sort of perked up in his seat because he knew who old Bach was, but he had never been able to hear this. And whatever Bach pieces would have been coming down to Mozart would certainly have not been these motets for double choirs or something like this. So he heard this
Right.
music and absolutely freaked out, and from then on his music was changed. Much more contrapuntal. And he started writing
See
fugues.
that I've never heard that. Is all see so Mozart was down in a big way. He must have been.
The great quote from Mozart is that at the end of this motet, he exclaimed aloud, "Now finally there's something we can learn from." Because you have to imagine him with so much capabilities. I mean, he was Mozart. He could have done everything. He would have probably been
Right.
starved for someone who was a greater master at music, and he found him.
That's cool. You're helping me connect the dots because were Mendelssohn and Mozart relatively similar time frames? Would they have been alive at the same time?
Mendelssohn was later.
So the myth is that like Mendelssohn brought Bach back. He like revived it, but Mozart was already down.
Everyone was already down, especially if you were a musician, especially if you were a composer. Bach never left the consciousness of the musical elite in Europe. But what Mendelssohn did was revive a piece that would have been performed in a specific time in a specific setting, and he brought it into the concert hall.
Oh, really? Okay.
So when we say that Mendelssohn revived Bach, really what Mendelssohn did was sort of revolutionize the way that Bach could have been heard.
Oh, because Bach's stuff wouldn't have been played by orchestras or concert halls?
In concert halls, essentially. Yeah, I mean, what Mozart was hearing was a celebration of the Mass in Leipzig, where the music would have been serving the same function in the Mass that it had been since the death of Bach.
Oh.
And so Mendelssohn said...
It hadn't gone commercial. It hadn't gone commercial
It hadn't
yet.
gone commercial, yeah.
Wild.
Mendelssohn said, this piece makes a perfectly good concert piece, and let's do it. He was like
Interesting.
18. I think he was 18 at the time when he revived the St. Matthew Passion.
So, but at some point between Bach and even Mozart, the concert hall thing happened. That wasn't a thing prior to that. It would all just have been church prior to that.
It's an excellent question.
They're similar venues, I guess.
There was court music performed in courts and things like this, but the idea of the recital was certainly one that came in the 19th century.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact,
So
this
much to
whole
learn.
this whole thing about playing music from memory was something that Liszt started as sort of like a magic trick to sort of convince people of the spell, because in Bach's day, Bach himself wouldn't have been playing a single one of these compositions by memory, no matter the quality of his imaginative capabilities, He would have used sheet music, and so this sort of myth we can think about someone sitting down at the organ and just, he would have had a guy there turning pages and everything.
Huh, but the improvising stuff, that would have been off the top.
The
Off
improvising
dome.
was obviously off the top, but I think that someone like Bach would have given precedence to composition over improvising.
Okay.
And through composing would learn how to improvise, not the other way around.
Right. Yeah. I would have gotten smoked back then. I would have been just making shoes or something. I have no chops. I got no chops in the writing notes first camp. But I've met a few people who that's how they roll, and I'm always really impressed by that.
Do you have a type of creative process that you often follow, or is it different every time?
I mean, I'm just I get into the instruments and the sounds and the feel of the thing. Like I'll write on a Wurlitzer or a piano or something. You get different results. So I kind of start with the timbres, and hopefully if it's good enough, like Bach, it could be played on anything and still get the same point across. But sometimes things just sound good on a really a tacky piano or something. So I'm kind of coming from the sonic side a little bit more. Which they all must have been gear nerds, right? They were all gear nerds. Like Bach, did he have some collection of claviers or something?
I see.
Like
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in that era, to the extent that everyone was an instrument player, they were also an instrument builder, an inventor, and repair person.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that was the
Speaking of
profession. It was music.
Wait, go ahead.
I said that was the profession. It was music. It was all aspects of music: building, tuning, repairing.
Oh.
I think someone like Bach would have found it perverse that a professional pianist has some other guy tune the piano before the professional. I mean, there's so much segregation among musicians today, but back then they were all aspects of it.
Interesting. Yeah. The specialization of labors has gotten so laser focused now. Speaking of which, I have a freebie up for grabs. Whoever wants this one. The well-mannered clavier, right?
The well-tempered clavier.
Oh, sorry, the well-tempered.
Oh, the well-mannered is very nice.
I'm screwing it up. And then you do the ill-mannered clavinet, where you play well-tempered clavier on like a nasty clavinet sound and kind of like with a little more groove or something. I've already heard you do it, actually, or something like it. Just one of your little sign-offs. I was like, whoa, same wavelength.
There is, I feel like Somerset Maugham or someone wrote a novel called The Ill-Tempered Clavichord.
Oh, shoot.
I feel like someone's beat us to it. I mean, of course, and then there's PDQ Bach, who wrote, has the whole album about the ill-tempered clavier and other disastrous experiments or something like that.
All right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but this would actually, like, be sick,
What I would like to hear is some Vulfpeck in just temperament, or some of these Baroque temperaments instead of equal temperament, and then have the experts,
Does that bug you? Are you like that deep on it yet? Like, can you, or maybe I was hearing you talk about it, where it's like music, ever since the pianos have been tuned to just, like, I can't enjoy this or that. Was that you?
I don't think I said I can't enjoy it, but there's that book with the great title, though the book isn't that interesting. It's How Equal Temperament Ruined Music and Why You Should Care.
Okay, that was it. Yeah.
You see, the greatest quote I ever read about the issue of well temperament versus just temperament or something like that, or rather equal temperament versus well temperament, is that we traded one type of beauty for another type of beauty. And so we traded the beauty of like the pure mathematical relationships in the triad with the ability to modulate to different keys.
Exactly, right.
And so
I'm team equal.
You're team equal.
Gotta be, right? I guess I've never heard is there somewhere I could hear some because Bach would have been just, right?
That was the thing about the well-tempered clavichord, is that it was the clavichord that could play, or it's not clavichord, it's clavier, which just means keyboard instrument, but it's the keyboard instrument that could play in all 24 keys. But this didn't mean that it was equal. It just meant that all 24 keys could be heard. So you have to imagine that his A-flat major sounded very different from his D major.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So he was trying to write. The challenge was to write and still have it sound good enough?
The challenge was also to come up with a tuning scheme, a temperament, that could accommodate for such a thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so, in fact, this doodle page, the front, I call it a doodle page, but it's the title page of the Well-Tempered Clavier, there's this little squiggle on the top of it. And people were looking at that little squiggle for 200 years before they realized that the squiggle was actually a key to the tuning scheme.
Huh. So equal temperament didn't even exist when he was doing that, right?
It did, and there are some people who think that what Bach meant when he said the well-tempered clavier was equal temperament, but this is an area of really, truly scholarly debate. Most people think that he did not mean equal temperament, but that he meant something that was sort of closer to, a temperament which favored the dark qualities of keys with flats and the bright quality of the keys with sharps.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's hip. Wow, yeah, this is pretty out. Well, I'm hanging on for dear life if anyone's listening, but I can hang. I can hang. Yeah, I'm coming in. I'm coming in pretty late to the game. I've never questioned these things. I've never really questioned what my Casio is tuned in.
Yeah.
But I'm learning a bunch. What was I going to ask? Something about do you look at his handwriting when you look at Art of Fugue and you're going through it? Are you actually looking at his handwriting?
For reference, I mean, his handwriting is oftentimes a way to sort of catch a glimpse of maybe the expression that is not there in the print.
Right.
His handwriting was so beautiful and so refined that, almost at a glance now, though it took me a while to differentiate between, say, his wife's handwriting or his son's or his students. But now you can really see the master's handwriting, and it really does look like, the Rembrandt studio, where you see the master and then you see all of his students sort of trying to do it in the same style. And at first glance, oh yeah, of course, it all looks like the same. But then you just notice there's that one thing. It's like the way that he sort of circles his half notes or does his treble clef or something. That's like, there's such calligraphy in it. It's incredible.
And so if you sat down to play some Art of Fugue, you'd read it from his handwriting generally, or you'd something a little more spaced out?
I suffer from the Liszt dementia, which is to play everything from memory when possible. So right now I'm of course I'm trying to memorize the Art of Fugue, but no, I wouldn't play it from the manuscript. It's just a little too hard to read if you're cruising through it.
Gotcha.
Although it's possible once you know the piece well enough and do it.
You're trying to memorize Art of Fugue on keys?
Oh sure.
Jeez, man. Jeez. Oh man, that's intense.
Well, there's that tradition of Baroque musicians who would sort of play a piece if they had it copied out. So you can see a lot of Baroque, historic practice musicians playing from copies that they themselves write out by hand, because there's a tremendous amount to be learned from doing that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, wow, that's apparently Bach would even be a little confused by what you're doing. Like, what do you say? Like, why memorize it or something?
Yeah, one has to think about why memorizing it. Recently I was doing the whole well-tempered clavier from memory, and then doing it also with the music, and sort of wondering what the difference in the final product was. For me, I've sort of just resigned myself to, it's a personal goal, and that's about it. It's a personal goal that I'm going to try and memorize
Okay.
this, or going to try and memorize that, but I can't back it up with this sounds better than that, or anything like that.
Right. Gould was a memory guy, right?
He was a memory guy, but I'm not sure how much of that is rehearsed.
Huh. Okay.
He's always very careful with his television appearances and everything to have just the right portion of Bach by memory and things like this. But I think that it was very, very carefully scripted and rehearsed.
I like some of his approach, as even the way I've put it on synth, or you'll put it into just sine tones. There's something nice about hearing it in a rigid presentation, which is kind of Gould's approach, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool. I always kind of dug that. Yeah, that was kind of part of the idea of putting it on synth, and it's a pretty expressive synth, or it sounds kind of like string like, but it's fun to just hear it on sine tones.
Are you able to get something out of the visualization of it? I certainly do get things out of the visualization of it when you can see all the contrapuntal lines represented in some sort of glowing color.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's the magic of getting people through the whole piece. Your typical, it's this hypnotic thing, and Bach is almost like trolling you with, it feels like it's about to end the entire song, and you're just sitting in that, and it's a funny feeling. Yeah, the visual is I think the key to it crossing over, because if you can't read music, you still, you get to feel even smarter, I guess. But yeah, I've actually always been partial, kind of as a drummer, I've always been partial to MIDI notation than standard notation. It's like reading standard notation of drum parts in high school, and like, this is totally absurd. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see Bach in MIDI too, where you see the actual distance a little clearer, or to scale.
I have something that I do whenever I can't understand a Bach piece or don't really, get what's going on harmonically or melodically, which is that I put it in MIDI and I listen to it.
Oh, really?
Because in that way you can just hear the pure structure of it and the architecture. And then once you understand that, then maybe you can go revisit the recording that was giving you a little bit of a problem, and you can understand why the player is making a little bit of rubato here or an ornament there, because now you have this foundation. But yeah, I would recommend that. I would recommend listening to MIDI Bach to almost anybody, as a good starting point. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I hope what we've put out is kind of a springboard. Yeah, someone tweeted back the string quartet playing number 9.
Mm-hmm.
It was so freaking good, and I probably wouldn't have found that without putting out our version. Do you check out Art of Fugue on strings and stuff?
There's that one recording by the Kellner Quartet I love.
And do they play through the whole thing?
They play all 14 contrapunctuses and the canons and everything. Yeah.
So where does Art of Fugue sit versus Well-Tempered Clavier? They're entirely different, right? Exercises. Is Art of Fugue kind of the magnum opus?
In a way, yes, but also no. You get a lot more maybe soul states in the Well-Tempered Clavier. You have 2 books of the Well-Tempered Clavier. One is at the early point in his career, 1722 or 1723. He's a young man, 35 or something like that. And then you have book 2, which is completed around 1747. It's 20 years later, 25 years later.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so you get to see like the breadth of his compositional knowledge. You can see him even hearkening back to Palestrina in book 2, and also looking forward to the classical style. He has several preludes in book 2, which are almost exactly like sonata allegro forms that you would see in Haydn or Mozart, or even early Beethoven. But yeah, then you do have the Art of Fugue, which is just like, some of it is so forward thinking and so chromatic that when you play it on the right instrument, like a Casio or a synth or something like that, it's just, the sound is so incredible. You think like not even Wagner, not even Schoenberg could think like this. And just these moments where if you excerpted 2 seconds of this and you said, which composer is this? No way anyone is saying Bach. It sounds way too dissonant, way too out there.
Way too hip.
Yeah, way too hip.
Wow. Yeah, I get that. That's what threw me off as an innocent third party looking at, I heard Bach and I was like, wait, this guy was before everyone else? Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Or Art of Fugue specifically, I guess. It's like, it gets out, man. It gets really out.
So when did you first hear Art of Fugue? Do you own a score of it?
No. I probably should, but yeah, in college when I was like, I want to do this fugue thing, I was like, well, Bach's like generally the guy for counterpoint. I somehow knew that. And then I was like, oh, he wrote Art of Fugue. That's probably a good starting point. I didn't know it was like this I didn't know it was so such a big deal. Just thought it was like a collection of fugues.
Right.
But yeah, you're out there just really doing some archaeology on it, which is interesting to hear. Yeah.
Well, a few last things. If you could transfer all of your music, all your musical talent to a non-musical related area, what would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I wish I was a little better at programming. I could never really do that. I wish I was I don't know, freaking What am I? Yeah, no, I mean, like everything. I mean, oh, you know what? I see like people on Instagram just drawing like it's nobody's business. They make it look so easy. And I was a decent drawer in like 4th grade, you know. I was doing all right. And I gave it up, but I was like, man, that looks so cool to just be able to draw. You know, and they're probably hurting, man. They're probably hurting, man, you know, like they used to probably go to work for Disney and do those animated movies. These cats who could just draw. Like seriously, you know? So, and now they're on Instagram. But some of them build up huge followings but yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Are you a chess player?
Not very good.
Who are your living non-musical idols?
I like man. You know, I like a few doctors like Dean Ornish and Caldwell Esselstyn, and then I don't know. You know, I like some comedians. Larry David's new season 10 of Curb. I feel like that's kind of Art of Fugue level masterpiece. I was just like shocked at how good that was. That is very Fugue like, the intertwining storylines.
Well, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, and so thanks for your
likewise.
time.
Yeah, no, you totally set me straight on like a whole lot of gaps in my public education.
Jack Stratton of Vulfpeck, thanks so much for being here, and look forward to talking to you again.
Likewise, thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening. Thanks, Eddie Barbash, for putting us in touch. Thanks, producer This Land Is, for helping with the content. The next episode will cover the 9th contrapunctus of the Art of Fugue, and we'll use one of these Vulfpeck recordings so you can hear the arrangement of which we were speaking. Now, before you go, I just want to know what the listeners think about Patreon and what you'd expect, say, if you were donating $10 to W.T.F. Bach on a monthly basis. What do you want in return? A fugue, a toccata, an essay, an envelope? Send your suggestions to @WTF Bach on Instagram or bach@WTFbach.com in an email. And do follow that Instagram account @WTF Bach, because every day, or almost every day, I'm Instagramming a different piece of Bach's music and writing into the stories what makes that particular moment of the music unique. A quick few housekeeping issues during the interview. It was Brooklyn satirist S.J. Perlman who wrote the Ill-Tempered Clavichord, and that's an embarrassing slip, not Somerset Maugham. And when Mr. Stratton and I were talking about string recordings of the Art of Fugue, I mispronounced, of course, the Keller Quartet's name, and they can be heard in the episode about the 7th contrapunctus. Thanks.
You are listening to the WTF Bach podcast. We're a brand new podcast, and we want to hear from you. You want a specific piece of Bach analyzed by Evan just for you? You want to partner with us? Write us. You can become a patron of WTF Bach. Go to patreon.com/WTF Bach. Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at WTF Bach. Find the links in the episode description. You can help this podcast stick around. What a great day to be listening to WTF Bach.
Get into it. Get to it. Get on with it. Get to it. Get to the point.
I thought the world was flat, till I saw it wore a hat, and then I discovered that the whole world was just fat, holding its waistline underneath a cloak and thin hat. Meanwhile, it's fine, just fine, and teeth are all in a straight line. White teeth, straight spine, white teeth, straight spine, John Baptiste. White teeth, straight spine, white teeth, straight spine, John Baptiste. White teeth, straight spine, white teeth, straight spine, John Baptiste.
ihr lebet wieder mit unser Team, ihr lebet wieder